Now we'll be entering the blocks for the building through the geometry screen. And some things to remember with block creation is that you want to have distinct blocks when you have buildings with sections that have different numbers of floors, building sections that are served by different mechanical systems. If you have different use types in your building, they need to be separate blocks because you can only assign one use type per block. And if you have a geometry that needs to be a combination of different types of shapes, you'll want to do that. You'll want to do that with multiple blocks. But let's get started and you'll see what's involved in adding a block. So we're going to add a block and you get this screen. You typically want to name each block in a way that you'll be able to recognize as you're bringing different assets to the block. The default is that the block is above ground. And these are the shapes that Asset Score provides that you can make your building a combination of. So our building, if we remember and look back at our handout on this building, is a bar building with some pieces with a sort of protruding peninsula at the center and then two bars at either end. We're actually going to break this block down into the first floor and then the second and third floor for the main bar, because the first floor of the bar is a little shallower than the other two floors, which is hard to tell from this picture, but you can see it here in this plan. There's a colonnade in the back, so the conditioned space is narrower. And then this centerpiece and the two ends will be separate blocks. So we'll have 5 blocks total, and I've got dimensions and square footage for these areas. If you have drawings of your building, that's great. If you just need to do a walkthrough for a quick takeoff on dimensions, that's fine. It doesn't need to be down to the inch, but it needs to be an educated guess. If you know your total area, you can back out your block areas. Okay, so I'm going to start with what I'm going to call our I'm going to start with what I will call our north block. It is above ground. This is a 3-story block at the end. The floor to floor height is 18 feet and the floor to ceiling height is 16 feet. The orientation for this block is 90 degrees from north, and the block dimensions are 72 feet by 33 feet, and I can create the block. Then you'll see the block appear in the green space on the screen. That's our north block. So now we'll move on to the next one, add a block. Now I'm going to add the first floor of that long bar building. God damn it. I'm going to add the first floor of that long bar building, and I'm going to call that the long block first floor. This is a 1-story block, same floor to ceiling height, floor to floor height as our other block. The orientation of this block is 0. It's perpendicular to my north block. And the dimensions of this block are 232 feet by 33 feet. I'm going to create that block. Now I'm not going to bother arranging these just yet. I want to create another block, and then we'll talk about how you arrange the blocks in the proper configuration for your building. Now I'm going to create the second and third floor of the long block. And I'll call this long block second and third. This is a two-story block. This is also 0 degrees from north, same orientation as my first floor long block. And the dimensions on this are the same length, 232 feet long, but the depth is deeper at 49 feet. I'm going to move. Now I'm going to configure these blocks, put them in relationship to each other. So my second and third floor block aligns with my end block. And there are some tools you can use to align your blocks. There's the snap tool, which will sort of make your blocks snap together if they're near each other, and also the guide tool, which will show the dimensions of blocks from each other. The other thing you can do is, if you want to get a different view, you can have these standard north, south, etc. views, or you can use the rotation angle, the camera angle rotation, and this lets you fly around and see what's happening, because sometimes things will look lined up and they're actually not. So this is lining this up with the bottom of the end block, and I want to line it up with the top. You can't edit your blocks or move them when you're using camera rotation, so you have to turn that off, and then you can adjust your block locations again. So I'm going to move this block down. Sometimes when you're having trouble aligning blocks, it's easier to start with another block. So I know that my first floor block had that colonnade in the back. So I'm going to align that with my second and third floor block. The front edges align and the backs are not aligned. So let me pop that into place. Okay, so that looks good, and I'll confirm that that's right by looking at the rotation, by using the rotation tool. And yeah, so I'm lined up properly for that. Then I don't really need these guides right now. I'm going to turn off the camera rotation and turn off the guides and bring my other block over. Great, okay. So now I can continue making blocks. I'm going to create my center block, so I'll add a block. I'll call it my center block. It is a 3-story block. The orientation on this one could be either way because it's a square block, so it won't affect the appearance. This block is 52 feet by 52 feet. Now this block is centered on the middle bar, so what I'm going to do is turn on the guides, and that way I can make sure that I've got this in the right location. Put it here. And what you can do with these guides is you can either drag your block and see the numbers change, or you can actually go in and type the different number that you want. So here I know I want it to be 96 and 84 is 180, so I know that the center would be 90 feet on either side. So if I type in 90, it'll automatically adjust, and it's 90 on both sides, and I'm in the right place. Now I can turn these guides off and go ahead and create my last block, which will be my south block. This is oriented at 90 degrees from north, and this is the same dimensions as my north block, which was 72 by 33. And I can bring that over. Oops, it looks like I made a mistake. I didn't make that the right size. I'll just edit that block now. I think I forgot to make it 3 stories, so I'll just go in and make that a 3-story block and update it. Okay, now we're in business, and then I'll put that where I need it to be. Great, okay. So now we've got all of our blocks created for Building 101. And you'll see that what's happened once I've created these blocks is I've got these exclamation marks and little warnings from Asset Score, and it's essentially telling me that every block has to have an associated use type, the construction assemblies have to be assigned to the block, lighting has to be assigned, and the mechanical equipment. So now we can go back and bring those assets to each block.